Alexander Cullers died of an opioid overdose in July 2014 at the age of 18. He'd taken some prescription oxycodone from his girlfriend's grandmother's medicine cabinet.
Rambunctious, crazy, always had a lot of energy, but the most loving kid you've ever met. But like I said, he suffered anxiety, depression, fought that a lot of his life.
Losing a son would devastate any mother. But then in April 2019, Walker's other son, Andrew Cullers, by then 18 himself, died of an overdose too. In his case, fentanyl, counterfeit oxy.
Growing threat of fentanyl, a highly addictive and highly lethal pain medication that's been around for years.
Fentanyl was a problem before the pandemic.
They're selling death.
Straight fentanyl.
He was laying right there on the bed.
Will they kill you? Sure.
This should not have happened.
You know, and it happened to me.
And he was trying to do CPR on him.
We see it more and more.
She was a good kid, but she tried to self-medicate.
There's nothing else you can do, and they said no.
There's ways you can die.
People who are dying from overdoses of fentanyl.
I can't treat you once you're dead.
Killing our children.
We have to, as a community, figure this out.
Why? Is a common question among the parents and family members of people lost to America's illicit drug du jour, the powerful opioid fentanyl. Answers are hard to come by. Harder still is figuring out what to do about it. Carrie Walker is one of those parents, but she has decided on a path forward. Her eldest son, Alexander Cullers, died of an opioid overdose in July 2014 at the age of 18. He'd taken some prescription oxycodone from his girlfriend's grandmother's medicine cabinet.
Rambunctious, crazy, always had a lot of energy, but the most loving kid you've ever met. But like I said, he suffered anxiety, depression, fought that a lot of his life.
Losing a son would devastate any mother. But then in April 2019, Walker's other son, Andrew Cullers, by then 18 himself, died of an overdose too. In his case, fentanyl, counterfeit oxy.
Losing one child to it, your fear of losing another child, I mean, it's just great. So with Andrew, it was like, you know, I educated him. You know, I educated him, and we talked about it. You know, there were times like I caught him smoking pot, and I sat down with him and cried and said, I cannot lose another child. I won't survive it. You know, and I would never try opiates. I would never do, you know, I would never try those. I know what they do.
Then one night he didn't come home. His friend found him in his car in Arvin, where he'd been parked at a gas station for 2 days, somehow undetected. Walker seized upon the only survival strategy she could think of, educating others. She has started a nonprofit called Steps of Change, a Facebook-based organization that has morphed from the school assembly speech circuit into what she thinks it really needs to be, a place for referrals, support, networking.
I don't know how many times I hear you're strong, it's amazing what you do, you're going to touch lives, you're going to change lives, you're going to do amazing things, you know.
Are you strong?
No. That's the easy thing to say, you know, the easy for them to say, because what else are you going to say? You lost 2 children, what do they say to you, you know? There's nothing you can say, but you're so strong, you know? And I do what I do, anger, I mean, a lot of it, you know, there's different emotions in it, but a lot of it's anger. It's like, I mean, our children, it's killing our children.
But she found strength in the strength of others like Louis Wright, a one-time heroin addict turned minister. He runs One Door Recovery, one of the very few, now perhaps the only, opioid detox centers in Bakersfield. And he's seeing something now in the rising threat of fentanyl he hasn't seen before. Fentanyl is showing up in everything, including non-opiates.
A lot of the fentanyl that's coming in is coming in, you know, Asia, the cartel, you know, Mexico, and it's a lot cheaper for them to use fentanyl than it is to go through, you know, the opium, the harvesting, all the stuff that goes into it. It's pretty rare to find, you know, heroin today that's truly heroin.
Since becoming a minister nearly a decade ago, Wright has presided over dozens of funerals, and only one of them, he said, one, was for a natural causes death. The rest have been drug-related.
This is the problem that we're seeing. Methamphetamine, cocaine, will they kill you? Sure. Heroin today, I mean, it's going to kill you. It's like Russian roulette every time you use it.
Thanks to the pervasive presence of fentanyl, the fear of instant death now applies to every drug on the street.
Fentanyl's a really, really high.
Inside a small downtown Bakersfield sandwich shop, I sat across the table from a drug addict, a user of crystal meth. That's a non-opioid stimulant. We used a special test strip to determine whether fentanyl was present in the dose he was preparing to inject. 2 red lines means no fentanyl detected. 1 red line means it's there.
That says it is fentanyl.
This addict said he would shoot up his full regular dose anyway. He would just, as advised, make sure he had a friend with him and a dose of the opioid overdose antidote, Narcan, close at hand. There's not enough Narcan to go around, common though it might be now. America will knock back this fentanyl crisis only with education and reasoned, thoughtful enforcement.
The person who actually sells.
John Hart of Bakersfield, who lost 2 nephews, Dylan and Cameron Hart, just 9 months apart last year, says legislation that increases penalties for street dealers is a big part of the answer.
What I'm urging my brother and the group that he's involved with to do is, instead of trying to pressure the police, whose hands are tied by the existing laws, to direct their efforts at the state legislature and see if we can get ourselves to the point where they can toughen up those laws so that not only the big dealers pay the price, but also the street dealers.
Kern County District Attorney CYNTHIA ZIMMER notes that fentanyl overdose deaths in 2020 nearly equaled the record number of local homicides last year, 140. And she agrees. State sentencing laws need to be toughened up. But she also says parents must be made aware of the danger, and she aims to do that.
Well, when kids come back to school in the fall, because they're at home now, we want to do a push to make sure parents know about fentanyl. Sometimes kids think they're buying ecstasy or Xanax or some of the other drugs, and it's not. It's fentanyl. And so it can be very, very deadly.
Legislation was, in fact, in the pipeline, but it took a different tack. State Senator Melendez, a Republican from Riverside County, tried to push through a bill this spring that would treat repeat fentanyl dealers who kill like repeat DUI drivers who kill. It failed, but she's not giving up on the issue.
We are considering options because obviously we didn't have much success in the committee hearing. So there is an option of doing a ballot measure, perhaps where we would let the voters decide if this is how they want to handle this. We haven't made a decision yet, but we're looking because it's that important. There's too many people. We had over 2 hours of testimony of people who had lost a loved one from this drug, and I just can't, in good conscience, stand by and just do nothing.
And now, as deadly as fentanyl has proven to be, a more deadly chemical cousin looms on the horizon. Carfentanil, a structural analog of fentanyl, is starting to show up in street drugs, and it's 100 times more likely to kill than fentanyl. Carfentanil has only 2 legitimate applications: as a tranquilizing agent for elephants, and theoretically in military operations. Banned under the International Chemical Weapons Convention, carfentanil was used most infamously during the 2002 Moscow Opera House hostage crisis, when Chechen rebels seized the packed Dubrovka Theater. The Russian military, in an attempt to incapacitate the 40 terrorists, pumped in aerosolized carfentanil. It killed 120 of the 850 Russian hostages. Some have likened its potency to nerve gas. And now it's coming to the streets of Bakersfield, disguised cruelly again as oxycodone. Hillcrest Cemetery has a special significance for Carrie Walker. Her boys are here, Alex and Andrew, born 7 years apart, but 18 now, both of them, forever, buried in the same plot, having suffered the same fate. A fate that might not have befallen them if not for a man-made pandemic built on profit, addiction, and deception. That's why we're telling these stories, because fentanyl is not an ordinary drug. It is not the sort of manageable high your son or daughter might think it is, in part because they may not even know what they're taking. We're telling these stories so families can talk to each other about the reality of fentanyl, about the finality of fentanyl, now, while it's still possible to have those conversations. The lethal synthetic cousin of prescription opioids that continues to make its presence known in cemeteries across the land, fentanyl, is not slowing. It's gaining momentum, even morphing into forms more diabolical yet. And unless some combination of education, legislation, and communication takes hold soon, The coronavirus outbreak will not be the only health tragedy of this moment in time that we'll look back on a generation from now with dismay and regret.